Hi friends, this is Marilyn from TarotClarity.com again, and I'm continuing my playlist of modern day publishers who recreate or create facsimile decks of historic tarot. And today's focus is on Marco Benedetti. I first became aware of Marco Benedetti when I realized that he had a Rosenwald deck. I had been on the fence about getting Hissman's deck, which is a art deck, reproduction of the Rosenwald. I was on the fence because it was costly, and when I realized that Marco Benedetti had put it out, in a less expensive run, I bought it. And then based on what I saw, I thought I probably would like the Rosenwald, and so I invested my money in the Hissman's art deck. Now, Marco, is able to, offer affordable decks because he runs them on Gamecrafter, right? So although there's no doubt in my mind that he probably chooses a high quality that Gamecrafter might offer, it still isn't, art paper, art quality paper. It's game, it's card game paper. But it offers you the ability, to own a Rosenwald tarot, for example, without having to invest in a large sum of money if you don't have the means, or if you're not really inclined to spend that kind of money on an art deck. Not everybody, who's a tarot reader, wants to do that or is in a position to do that. He's put out a few decks, and I don't have every deck that Marco's put out. I just have a few, but I'll share what I have. Now, this deck, the Oswald Worth Tarot, I had thought I was purchasing from his, art deck line. I thought I was purchasing from his more expensive line, and I guess I got I wasn't on his website. I had read about him on another website, and I was like sold to buy the art deck, and it rerouted me to the Gamecrafter, and I ended up buying this from Gamecrafter. So that's why I don't have the art deck from the Oswald Worth. But he recreated the Oswald Worth in Gamecrafter. We have three versions. We have a black and white version. We have this kind of art Nouveau version, and then we have a more graphic version. I believe Oswald Worth, created two versions of his deck, and so Marco Benedetti includes both of those versions, plus black and white in his Gamecrafter series on this deck. And I love the Estensi Tarot. Now, the Estensi Tarot has been known as the Charles VI Tarot. I believe there were only 14 or 16 surviving trump cards from that deck. And I have an earlier version by Lo Scarabeo. Before Lo Scarabeo got into creating art decks per se, they had a line of like historic art decks, in the 90s. They had, the Charles VI, they had a Visconti Sforza, they had a Solabusca, I have all three of those. I'll be showing them in another video. But at any rate, Marco took it upon himself to make available the Charles VI. Now you'll notice that the borders are different, and that is because, as I mentioned, only 16, I think, or 14 cards are extant from that original deck. And so what he did was he took cards from other cards of the day, of that day, to, to make up, I guess I have it upside down, to, make up the ones that are missing. Now, there was no pamphlet that was included with this deck, so it's not noted what was taken from what deck. I do know which ones were the Estensi trumps because I have, I've done my research and I know which ones were from the Estensi, but he did take other cards from other decks and to supplement what was missing. But it's still a cohesive, coherent deck. I'm not sure if he put this out in an art deck, but I would buy it. This one is one that was printed on Gamecrafter. This is definitely a Gamecrafter one for Marco. But he does, despite it just being a Gamecrafter deck, I mean, he really did his work. He really did his research, and he's somebody to keep your eye on because I think he's going to do really fine work in the tarot, for the tarot community. Let's see. Marco created his own deck, his own art deck a number of years ago. I believe he created it originally in 1996, and then he released this version of it on Gamecrafter, recently. He gave, it's my belief that he based this deck on the Visconti Sforza decks. It's like an homage to that deck, or to those decks. And this one, again, is on Gamecrafter, so it's, typical playing card stock. But it's very modern and kind of appeals to me. It's a modern version of someone's interpretation of the Visconti Sforza. So you might like that. And in all fairness to Marco, I do want to highlight one of his art decks, which is extraordinary. It's the only art deck of his that I have. Like I said, I had intended to buy the art deck of the Oswald Worth, but I ended up buying it by, this version by mistake. But I have the Fina della Torre by the International Museum of Tarot, which I showed in a previous video, showing their work. And that Fina della Torre deck is exquisite. And I knew that Marco had a similar deck to it. It's not the same deck because it's a contemporary, more or less, of the Fina della Torre. It's a little bit different. It comes, I guess, a little bit later than the Fina della Torre because they substituted, in this deck, they substituted numbers 2 through 5, like the Pope, the female Pope, the Empress, and the Emperor, with the 4 Moors. And so he created this deck, recreated this deck, the fine cards of the world, the Tarocchi Bolognese. It's in a lovely box. You can see it's a wooden box, and cardboard. So it's like wooden sides and cardboard. And this one, he only did a run of, I think, 20 cards. And I was fortunate enough to get number 4 out of 20. So this is a nice deck to have. It's very similar in quality to the Fina della Torre. It's smaller. It's a smaller deck. It's not as large. And the cards themselves are very, very similar to the Fina della Torre, with the exception of the 4 Moors, which of course probably I won't actually end up showing them because, when you're looking for something, it never pops up. But it's identical, I believe, in just about every way to the Fina della Torre. with the exception of the 4 moors in place of cards 2 through 5. And of course, none of the moors are popping up, so to show you. And this card stock is a different quality. It's not as textured. It's not textured at all. It's a smooth kind of satin finish. And it's small. I believe these are the original backs. But it's a small cardstock. But you could see the Bolognese tendency toward a long, thin deck. And I think that's all. I think that's all I have from Marco. So, again, Marco Benedetti has a line available on Gamecrafter of many decks, you know, that are historic decks, which are typically recreated by expensive houses and, you know, art houses, and maybe you can't afford them, but check out Marco Benedetti. He might have what you're looking for, but he also, to his credit, has a fine art deck himself. And I'm getting more interested in his fine art deck, so I'm sure I'll be purchasing more cards from his finer collection. But I thought I'd give Marco a shout out because he makes these decks available on Gamecrafter for an affordable price. And if you like what you see there, you're going to like what you see with his finer decks. Until next time, friends, peace. Remain well.